Welcome back, one and all, to Imperium Galactica, where it's time to really dive into the colonization push, the land grab, if you will. And we have Center 12, which Colony Hub is up and running. It took about a day and a half. Center 16, we have also colonized as well. We have a third colonization ship that is in process. Will be finished a little bit before the end of the day. And so all of that continues. We have put hospitals up on Ajepolis, Mirrodin, and Giantropolis with the usual population growth slowdown happening. Moving ships around, we're building a military spaceport on Zeusin to free up the Executor. You can see we've put the phased arrays now on the Defender and the Thorin, and you can see they're much longer radius. Now the Thorin will have absolutely no trouble protecting both Mirrodin and Ajepolis, and we're going to continue that whole process. The Terminator going across the top of the galaxy here. See, we've discovered another planet. We're continuing to get a mix of planets that are occupied and not occupied. The Hunter over halfway on its first zig across the bottom. But we want to focus in on the economic realities of colonizing. And there's somebody who's really made a lot of good comments on the game as we've gone through, who mentioned that, if you have a worker shortage, you won't get as much income from trade buildings. Well, that may be true in one of the other versions of the game. I'm on the GOG version. There's a Steam version. There's others. Some people played the original. I know there's small little differences. This could be one of them. I don't know. Can't confirm or deny that. All I can tell you is I've tested it out, and worker shortage has no impact in the GOG version that I'm using on your income in terms of trade. It has no impact on anything that's important until you build factories, as we've talked about before. So that's what I'm going with, and that's approach that I'm taking. So if there are small little differences of that in your copy of the game, if you're playing, I can only go by what I have available to me. So I'm building a nuclear plant and solar plant. And you might wonder, okay, why are we building a nuclear plant on this colony? Well, it's faster. We want to get power up as quick as we can so that we can start reversing the decline in morale and population. Because as soon as you land, you get 2,000 to 3,000 people when you land, and that's triggered by random when you land. I'm assuming the rest of them don't survive the setup process. You have, doesn't matter what type of planet it is, it's always between 2,000 and 3,000. And then you're losing 100 people a cycle while the colony hub builds up, because you don't have a colony hub, you don't have living space for people, etc. So the quicker we can turn that around, and we can do it much quicker by building a nuclear plant, and then we can just scrap this later, but we've spent a few thousand to gain increased income from this colony for the rest of the game. So that's what we're going for there. Now, there is some area on this planet, blocked off over here that is not great for building, but there still is quite a bit that's useful. And we want to dive into our trade buildings. So we're going to throw a trade center there. And let's throw a trader spaceport perhaps out this way. And then we're going to, we're going to throw up an arcology. And these seem to me that they'll fit reasonably well in here. So I'm just going to, I could also put a hospital over here actually though. This might be a better place for a hospital. So I'll move that around. And perhaps just work out this way. We're going to want a bank. So maybe that'll work, and then keep going out that direction. Just try to fit with the terrain as usual, wherever it is. And then, really, at this point, we're not going to be putting up the police station, etc. We are going to be putting up a church, but that's all for now. And so we spent in the neighborhood of 85 to 90,000 additionally on top of the amount for the colonization ship. So we've put in 160, 170,000. We'll be gradually adding more as the colony builds up, but for now we're just going to want, as soon as we get the nuclear plant and the church and the arcology, and then we can start to have a little bit higher taxes. But we're not going to be moving them above moderate for a while to get to 5,000 and add more buildings. So then we just want to proceed further. Now, in the research side, we are now on our fourth partially done technology. We did the Hubble, and we've done, we've partially worked on the bombs and the heavy rocket sled, and now we're doing the missiles. And we're just going to gradually move forward. And I find this part of the game to be probably the most tedious. You know, you're dealing with a bunch of planets, manipulating their economy, moving all these ships around to try to make sure everything's covered, and, you know, the scouting and everything else. But it is very rewarding in terms of the benefit that it's going to bring us as we move ahead. So there's going to be a lot of time skipping to sort of relieve the tedium for those of you who are watching. Forward we go to November 8th, where we have a little bit more drama going on. We are presently building, actually, some satellites. We did run out, so we're working on getting a few more surveys up. Then we're going to do one more colonization ship. We need a total of 5 colonies added by the colonization ships in order to get the amount of development centers we need for the Hubble. So that's our next aim. And we currently have a 3rd and 4th colony ship out. One was going to go to Exterior 20, but we got sniped again by the aliens. So now it's coming over here to a cratered planet, which, not a great planet type, but we're already down in this area. We'll go ahead and take it. Obviously, we'll need to build a military spaceport there, but the Tiger cruiser is on its way as the temporary escort. So then our other one is coming out in this direction. And we're going to take Center 11, Desert Planet. We've known about that one for a while, but we should be able to cover that pretty well. Now, in some of our exploring, we have discovered the final planet type over here in the Andromeda area, as you can see. And these two are neptoplasm planets. Well, what on earth does that mean? Well, basically, they're actually not that bad of a planet type. The overall hierarchy, you know, works as such. Earth is best, and then Rocky is second best. You can't build fusion plants there, but you can build parks, and Rocky is the only planet other than Earth type that you can build parks on. Cratered and deserts are the worst because you need to build water vaporators on them. And the ones in the middle, the frozen, the liquid, the neptoplasm, they're limited. They can only build either the solar or the fusion plant. They can't build parks, but they don't need the water vaporator to keep going. So that's the breakdown of the 7 different planet types. I think it's 7? Yeah. And we could take these. It wouldn't be a bad idea. They're on the other side of the galaxy. Obviously, won't be heading there anytime soon. And it is worth noting that, for example, this may cause some aggression coming down here. And there was a fairly difficult choice where to go. I mean, I could have gone somewhere like over here. I could have gone more up this way, and you could argue this might have been a better choice than coming down here, but I wanted the Earth-like planet. You can actually trigger some additional attacks, at least it certainly appears that way, by getting a planet that is close to the aliens. And that'll become important to us later on. So another reason to keep our strategy of getting planets in close proximity where we are. We have had another attack here that's coming. And this one I'm triggering with a fighter. These are the Acombs. We're going to deal with them for the first time. They came down this way, headed for Centronome. And regardless of whether I'd moved this Berserker over here or whether I intercept with a fighter, I wasn't going to be able to fight them far enough away from the planet to be able to retreat. Just because of how close, it wouldn't have a radar detection much further out. And they just close the distance very quickly. So we're going with a fighter here. And you can see their fleet is immensely wimpy. It's just a flagship and 3 fighters. So we're not really going to lose much here. You know, just the one fighter, and we can all say our sympathies for the pilot, of course, but that death there, that destruction, will allow us to continue on, and the rest of the Empire can survive just fine, and away go the Acombs. They have been pacified for now. Weaker even than the Sullup fleet that we dealt with, but not going to cause us any permanent problems. We did have a few days break before the next attack. The Sullups again, we'll get to them in a bit. We managed to get one more colony settled over here in Outer 15. Only one because we have to be gradually building up military spaceports as we go. We're really extended as far as the fleet can be extended at this point. We did have, of course, the buildup of the initial significant planetary investment for the new buildings on the colonies as they get put up. And then also, we had some, existing things, your food factories, etc., The Sand Sterling and Naxos went up over the 30,000 mark, which is a bit noteworthy, because at that point you need fire brigades. You can't just, settle with the way things are. They will demand a fire brigade if you do not give them one ahead of time. So we have one here on Sand Sterling, and of course you also need to get every 10,000 people. We're continuing to put up the police stations to boost attacks morale. So all of those costs just ran a little higher than our income could supply. And then, gotta do a little bit of spoilering here, because we have explored up here, and in the upper right, those of you who have played the game before will be quite surprised, most likely, to see that most of these planets are empty. And that doesn't happen unless you're in a big hurry to get through this far into the game. Normally, most of these would be occupied by now. These are the area where the late game enemy, the big bad, the hostile expansionary race that Dr. Reinhardt referred to, that's where they are. We definitely don't want to go over here and tick them off. The planets aren't that great, but even if they were, we want to leave them alone. They will eventually capture them. I will not name that enemy until we actually encounter them directly. But it is worth noting that one of the reasons why we want to avoid this area, obviously we could just use this, stalling technique of fake attacking their ships and making them turn around if they attacked us. But if you have any sort of combat with this race, then what will happen is you'll advance to the final rank of the game. And we don't want to do that yet because we still have lots of business to do here. Speaking of which, if we check in on our research, we're currently working on the heavy tank. We have moved about halfway through the list of research projects that we now have for Admiral rank. Of course, they're only getting a little bit more than halfway done in most cases. So we're maybe a third at best, probably not quite that far through the research process. But we are racing along as quickly as we can, and the heavy tank is a fairly long one, but making progress as we are able. So, the Solops, let's see what they have to say with us down here. And this is the first larger fleet. Like, this is the typical fleet that you're going to see attacking you more at Admiral rank. They've got a couple flagships. They've got a number of destroyers. They're destroyer ones, so they're not super advanced ones. A bunch of fighters, etc. And what are we going to do? We're going to do the same thing as ever. We're going to turn around and retreat. But it is worth noting that they're getting bigger. This is a much bigger force than the Solops sent after us, what was it, a week and a half ago? Something like that. And amusingly, this is not the only one that's coming after us. There we go, just popped on screen. Those are the Ecolops. So we're going to need to head back to Achilles. These were headed for Achilles, and they're headed for Achilles as well. This just sort of reinforces the importance of having everything covered in terms of being able to intercept anything that comes at any of your planets. Now, this is actually a hilariously small fleet. It's one flagship and 2 fighters. So that was no problem to fight off. But what happens if you're not ready, if you don't fight them off, if they start taking your planets? Well, you can just, regroup and take them back, but obviously if you've sold all your military like I have, that's not going to work out very well. Very important I have my ducks in a row. But if you let it go too far, well, you can still lose the game here. Here's another alternate timeline bit, and I don't know what the exact trigger is for you losing, but this is our second to last planet. You can see it's January 3rd, so obviously it's much later in this particular scenario. It takes them a while to actually invade all of your planets if you just let them do that. But in this case, obviously we're going to lose this battle, and then yes, say goodbye to the Thorin, for it is gone. Definitely want to avoid that consequence. I was expecting the alien attacks to become a little bit more consistent and intense after those last couple, but the previous few days here have actually not seen anything. It's been quiet. We've been able to go about our business on our own. So we've accelerated to the point now where we have the Hubble telescope. We have explored just over 2/3 of the galaxy. There's a total of 105 planets, I believe, and we have 30 survey satellites left to go out. I don't plan on building any more. I think that should be enough, if my calculations are right, to cover everything that's available. And the Hubble here is 2,100 credits to build, and that's it, which is rather ridiculous from my perspective, because it's 4,000 for the entry-level ground-based radar telescope. But the Hubble's way superior in all ways. Don't have to give it any support in terms of workers or energy, so we're going to abuse that cheapness and be building these. We're going to need to have some tough decisions going forward in terms of where our divestment goes, but we are expanding. Again, we have Center 15 over here. We're going to be coming up here next, probably focusing on this upper middle area of the galaxy. There's some nice, closely clustered planets, reasonably anyway, that we'll want to grab if we can. And you can see there's still, there's lots of targets. Most of this here is taken, but there's still lots of available planets that we can grab. So we're ready to turn the page now into the, I would say the second half at least, the final part of Admiral rank, which is simply going to be to grab every planet that we can get and keep the research going until there's nothing left that we need. So that grind process will continue. Until then, thanks for watching. Imperium Galactica will resume soon.